Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Ask the Trainer session. Hey, Noseman, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's nice.
That's great
Morning
to
here.
hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome, everybody. Today, we prepared a few things based on a question about knitting. But before we jump into that, let me share my screen and take care of some housekeeping, as always. So here we are on the Maxon events page. If you go to the Maxon website, news, events, and yeah, as you know, this is the site where you can find all the events that we're doing, be it live events or in-person events, well, live stream events or in-person events. You can find those here. Also, when we stream, we always record our sessions. So the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel is the place where you can find the recording. So we are streaming on the main Maxon channel for this stream, but also on the Maxon Training Team channel. The Maxon Training Team channel is the one that will have the recording on it then later. All right, so definitely check that out. There are hundreds of hours worth of training on here. Also, we have Cineversity here, cineversity.maxon.net. So whenever you want to get started with one of our apps, or you want to deepen your knowledge with some sort of tutorial series, this is the right place to go. Definitely check this out as well. Then, if you are interested in certification, go to the certification site, maxon.net/certification, and here you can see the pro user certification and the trainer certification. Both are based on the certification topics list. So if I click that, you can see a pretty extensive list, and definitely check this one out because it's a good source of learning about things that you don't know yet. So yeah, this is a pretty complete list of what you should know for the certification. Actually, it is a complete list, of course. That's why we created it. All right, and last but not least, we have the Maxon merch store here. And as some of you might already know, if you are new to this stream, you might not know it. We have a Maxon Ask the Trainer exclusive wear store, and we're going to paste the link in the chat as well, along with a passcode. So when you enter this site, using the link, you have to enter a passcode, and using this passcode, you can order one t-shirt for free, and you only have to pay for the shipping. All right, that's the housekeeping. Did I forget anything? I don't think so.
I don't think so, and I don't really care because
we have to jump in, right? We are actually excited about what we want to show. So the question that we had was something about knitting, and today Noseman and I explored a few knitting techniques, and we want to share these. So Noseman,
yes,
who shall start? Do you want me to start, or?
I'm a wild card. I may show something totally different. I'll think about it. You can do whatever you want, and I want to greet everyone that's saying hi and peace and good morning and good afternoon and good night from all sorts of different places, and including my grandmother's home country of Turkey. So hello everyone, good morning. Cyprus, Brazil, woo, Germany. What else do we have here? That's excellent.
Yeah, that's super. And we already have one question here. Let me show that from Andrew. May I ask you about Cinema 4D? Yes, that's exactly the format where you can do that. This is why we are having these streams. They ask the trainer streams. So definitely feel free to ask your questions. One thing that we would like you to do whenever you have a question, please start your comment with a capitalized question so that we can find your questions easier. All right, knitting. There are a ton of ways how you can approach knitting, not only because there are a ton of different knitting patterns. There are very easy solutions for very loose, loose setups where you might have some knots and those are connected by some strings, you could use that, use a cloner for that. But let me jump into like the typical knitting pattern right away. And let's start with just one part of it. And since I'm not a native speaker, actually, I don't know what this one thing is called.
The loop. The loop.
Is it called a loop? Okay, I'm gonna tell you.
Even if it's not called the loop, we're going to call it the loop. There you go.
Okay, so let's go to the front view here. And what I'm going to do first is let me activate snapping here, and I'm going to snap to the grid and work plane, and I only need to snap to points. And I'm just going to do that so that I can work symmetrically. I'm using the spline tool here. So let me start, let's say here, with some sort of loop, and let's go with something like this. We can refine that. It doesn't need to be 100% symmetrical. I just want to start out so that it's, as I just noticed, pretty ugly. But let me switch off.
Don't say that. Nice.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
All right, so let me just adjust this a little bit. Yeah, you know, it is gonna work. So let's do something like this.
I'm preparing replies for various questions, so
that's perfect.
Yeah, we have some brilliant questions here.
All right, good. So this may be our first one. The interesting thing is now we just modeled it from the front. So that means that in Z direction there is no there is no depth, so to speak. But what we need is we need this to be bulged a little bit to the front. So let's do that. Let's select those points here and let's move them a little bit forward. And here in the right view, we can select these points and just rotate them in a little bit, and then we can select these points and rotate those in the other direction as well. So now I'm going the other way around. That's that doesn't matter for now. You can go this way or the other way. All right. So the interesting thing is that this is now the whole one loop that we can use. But actually, sometimes we want these loops to just be like created, to come up, and we can do that with a cloner and scale the whole scale of it, or scale the whole loop. Or we can also animate it in. Then it would go, let's say, from one line or from one point into a loop, and we could control the whole thing much better. So let's do this. Let me go to frame 30, let's say, and let me set keyframes for all of these points. And the way you can do that is by using point level animation. So here you can activate point level animation, and actually we don't need to animate the others. So let me set a keyframe here. And what we just did is we set a keyframe for the positions and the tangents here of those points. Now let me go back to frame 0, and now we can move stuff around. So first of all, let's move these here to the outside and these here inwards, like so. And let's also rotate them and just make it so that they are, more or less a straight line. Doesn't need to be perfect for now. So let's go down here. Let's just put all of these roughly onto the center line here. And then we can rotate these in like so. It's always good to do that in 3D view, actually, so we see what we're doing. So this one needs to go back. This one, needs to go this way. Maybe I do that here from the side view again. Okay, and yeah, this is something you would do with all of these, just to make sure that they will work. Also, scale down the tangents as you need. This is a little bit well, a tedious task here, but this way you can see how you can create it, right? Okay, so let's scale this one down a little bit as well. And this one here. And this one here as well. All right, so let's just say we now have a line. That was maybe one of the most awkward ways of creating a line. But you'll see that it makes sense in a second. So now, important, set a keyframe. We are at frame 0, set a keyframe. And now, if we scrub the timeline, you can see that it's scaling up. We could set a keyframe here in the middle, let's say for to make that arc shape a little bit more visible here as well, because all of the interpolation here is linear. That's something that you need to know. So let's say we want to go here with the top most point. Let's just do that. I move this one here. I move these two somewhere like here, rotate them in, and these ones here. And let's say that's enough. I'm going to set another keyframe. And now you can see that it's going this way first and then back in. So this is how you could create an animation here. You could also save more morph targets and use morph, the post-morph tag to do that. But now the interesting thing is that we can clone this. All right, so let me do that. I'm going to select the spline. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and create a cloner. This way it's going to become apparent immediately. And what I can do here now is, yeah, I'm going to clone this as a grid. I'm going to clone in X and Y direction and not in Z. And now you can already see that once we make these, yeah, let's say match, that we already created that sort of knitting pattern. And here's one cool thing about that, actually. So sometimes we may want to animate this these loops, right, to get in. Sometimes we want to have these loops and just animate the spline in. And you can do pretty much all of that with these kind of setups. If you want to animate the loops in from what we just created, this one here, and let's say use an effector to trigger the animation, you can do that. So let me select the cloner and let me also select a plane effector. And in that plane effector, we're going to go to parameters and untick position. And instead, we're going to use the time offset. And we can set this to 30 because our animation is 30 frames long. One thing to keep in mind is that in the cloner, we need to go to the transform tab. And here in animation mode, we need to set this to fixed. And now, in theory, when we animate the strength here, you can see that we are animating these in and out, right? But the strength is something we can mask using a field. So let's go to the fields and let me go down here to create a linear field. And suddenly you can see that, let me scale this up a little bit. You can see that we can move this field along the axis or any axis here, right? We can even create sophisticated field setups here and create an effect. And if we want to render this, it's absolutely no problem. We can just either use a sweep or we can render the spline as a curve using Redshift. And Yeah, another thing that is quite cool is that, yeah, let's say you want to create some sort of animation that will unveil a line like this. You can actually use the trim spline modifier. I already searched for it. So if you go to the asset browser and type in trim, you will find the trim spline modifier. And we could place it here under the spline. It works as an effector. And now, if I play with the start and end, you can see that this is happening, right? It's happening with every loop separately. And of course, that's not what we want. But one thing that has been added in one of the latest releases of Cinema 4D is that the connect object is also capable of merging splines. So if I throw this under the connect object and set the tolerance so that that the distance, that it's bigger than the distance between the 2 points, the 2 endpoints, then this should work. Let me see if this is the case already. If I put the trim spline modifier here, yeah, now you can see that these lines are coming in separately. And of course, we can do this per segment as well. And then, oh, these are the segments now. Okay, good. Good to know. So here we go. All right, these are 2 tips already that I can share here. Of course, there is a way of creating this whole pattern like more mathematically accurate with formula effectors and such. But before I show that, I may just pass it along to Noseman so that you can show what you prepared.
Why would you do such a thing? Right, I'm not gonna show what.
Well, I can continue if you're not ready.
I'm just gonna reply to some of the questions here because there are some.
Okay, then I'm gonna continue. No problem. No problem.
Continue, and I'm preparing some replies here.
So the thing is, how can we create such a thing in a way that is like more mathematically, I don't know if you can say mathematically accurate when it's about knitting patterns, but one way of creating knitting patterns is using formulas. And let me show this to you. I'm going to create a null, and I'm going to clone the null. And here I'm going to set this to linear, and I want many clones. Let's go with 100. And let me also go with less distance between the points here, or the nulls, like so. Now you can see this line here. Maybe we can make those nulls a little bit more visible by just using, let's go with locators. Does that work? There we go. They are a little bit too big. More like so. Okay. So what we can do here is we can use effectors, like formula effectors, to create a sine wave, and we can just use the default formula in theory to make that happen. So let me try this. Let me create a formula effector. That's not the effector menu. This is the effector menu. And let's say we want to affect the Y position here. Okay. So by default, you can see that there is quite some stuff happening with scale and position. It is pretty intimidating when you see the formula effector for the first time, but actually it's a quite useful tool. First of all, let me go to the parameters tab. What we need here is position Y. So I'm going to get rid of position X and instead use position Y. So now you can see the sine wave. And also what we don't need is scale. So now you can see this. This is already quite nice. All right, let me see what we can do here. Actually, we don't really need to adjust the whole formula. If we press play, you can see that this is animated. If we don't want this to be animated, we can adjust the formula, or we can just set the project time to 0 here, and then it will just stick. And we can adjust the frequency here to 5, and then suddenly we have a sign. Okay, good. The only thing that is now difficult is because we are comparing the ID of each point with the total count, is that when I now add some clones, you can see that we're just expanding that whole thing instead of adding new loops. And in order to change that, we have to adjust one little thing. And I'm just gonna use a fixed number, a constant, instead of the count. So let me type in 100 because that's the clone count at the moment. And now if I go up or down with the clones, you can see that we're just expanding or shortening this whole thing. All right. Now, another thing that I want to do is I want to make the line visible. And one way to do that is by using, from the MoGraph menu, the tracer. So we do that, we have the cloner in here, and then we just connect all objects, and suddenly we can see this line. All right, so now we have a sine wave. But as you saw before, we actually need these loops. So we need a shape that is a little different than that. And to achieve that, I'm going to create a copy of that formula here and just make it work in X direction. So let me go to the parameters, and instead of Y, we're going to affect X. And, oh, maybe that's a little bit too much. Let me go down here with the values, and nothing is happening so far because this is not assigned to the cloner yet. So let me add this here. Okay, and now you see it has an effect. The cool thing is that actually the only thing we need to adjust here, if I remember correctly, is just the frequency. So here you can see that we're now getting a symmetrical shape. The only thing that is not working correctly is the direction, right? So maybe let me go to the parameters and let me just type in -30. And suddenly we have that shape that we saw earlier. And of course, we can still adjust that a little bit. But yeah, that's already a good starting point. The next thing is to create this bulge. So let's do that. It's Z direction. So let's do that. And in here, we're going to go to the parameters, switch off X or set it to 0. And for Z, we type in, well, maybe we don't need 50. Let's go with 30 as well. And yeah, let's just go to the effector, and we might have to adjust this a little bit. But the first thing we need to do in order to see something is to add this formula to the cloner. And suddenly you can see, all right, we now have this shape. It's also very interesting, and it will also somehow work to create some sort of knitting pattern with that. But actually, what's happening here is not the correct thing. So let me have a look. Maybe we need to go down to a frequency of 5. Now it's, yeah, tilted. What we actually need is we need that loop to not start here, but here on the top. So instead of using the sine, we're just going to use the cosine. And now it should work. It's creating holes now. Let me go to this 10 again. Okay, just by doubling this, we are back on track and can use this pattern. And now you can see that we created the correct thing. Let me just use a negative value here in the parameters, but that's pretty much it. This is how you could create or use a formula doing that. If you want to clone that now, so let me go to the cloner. First of all, of course, you can adjust this whole count, right, to make this bigger or smaller. But if you want to clone this, let me just clone this setup of tracers. you will see that this is not going to work. And one way of making it work is actually to use a MoSpline and just read the tracer here. So make sure the MoSpline is beneath the tracer. It needs to be executed after the tracer, and Cinema 4D's object manager is going to be executed from top to bottom. So let me switch this to spline mode. And in here, we're going to use the tracer as the source spline. And then we have this MoSpline object. And this one can be cloned. And now we can create all sorts of crazy MoGraph stuff with that. So let me clone this in a linear way and maybe add some more here. You can see that, yeah, we now have a knitting pattern, and it's 100% procedural. All right, that's actually what I wanted to show. If you want to render this, you can go to right-click and then render tags and add a Redshift object tag, for example, and then set this to some sort of curve. Let's go with cylinders for now, and let's have a look if it's going to render. There we go. Now we can see the curve. We can make this a little bit bigger or thicker. And let's say we want to add some sort of lighting, maybe coming a little bit from the back. And suddenly you can see this nice knitting pattern. And it also is looking good from the other side, like so. All right. So yeah, this is just showing me that we could spread this apart a little more, like so. But here you can see it works perfectly. And the further you go away, yeah, the more you can add and the more complex this is going to look. All right. So this is one way of creating this whole setup. There are, of course, several ways of doing that. Noseman is going to show you a different way. So
I said I'm not going to show it. I have 20 questions to answer. You're stuck with all that. I don't want to show knitting. Yeah, I have a knitting setup here. I may show it at some point.
Okay, good.
We have a ton of questions in the chat, and I've been doing some stuff here. So
yeah, let me have a look at the questions as well, because as you might know, this is actually the show to ask your questions.
Yes.
So yeah, but this was also based on a user question from last time.
Yes.
So
let's go with the quick ones. Let's go. So water simulation in Cinema 4D. If you want realistic water and you don't want to use real flow, you can use X Particles, which has a very good fluid simulation. Yeah, or if you want to do, we did some shows where we showed cartoony flows with water, or you can hack the Cinema 4D Pyro system to create something similar and so forth. But if you're looking for a dedicated fluid simulator, I would suggest you also take a look at X Particles. So that's the reply. Let me go through Symphoniac. I don't know if I can answer this. So maybe, so I have a question. Can you add a Falloff on a joint weight or multiple joint weights? There is a way to add fields to create Falloffs, but unless you explain exactly what you're trying to do, I find it's hard for me. If you go to the joints, you will see there's a Falloff tab, and maybe partially that could help you do what you're doing. But unless we know, that's a Falloff tab there, and it will affect the way the joint is bound, creates the weights, but the specifics of the question make a huge difference. So let me grab the screen for a second. I'm going to answer a question that was posted before we started the show. I can't see the specific user, Dominic G, but I'm going to answer nonetheless. The question here, it's an interesting one. It says, I have a circle with 200 centimeter radius, and you can see what Cinema 4D gives you as the length. And Cinema 4D gives the length. I've done it with Espresso, 1257. But if you calculated 2 pi times 200, you get 1256. Why is that? And that's actually an excellent question. And here's the explanation to that. A circle, if you make it editable, it's made out of, because my initial assessment, my initial hunch was the intermediate points, but it's actually not the intermediate points. So a circle internally is a Bezier circle. And because of the way Bezier splines work, this is actually not a perfect circle. It has some oddities as compared to a circle. And the result of that is that the circumference of the circle, it's close, but it's not 100% accurate. And the way to create a mathematically perfect, so to speak, circle is actually not using a circle. It's using an n side with an enormous amount of points. So funny enough, if you take an n side, and what I've done here, just for anyone that wants to geek out, I've taken the object, used the spline node in Espresso, linked the object I want, which is a spline, and one of the outputs over here is called length. And I've fed that output to the input of these text splines so I can get live feedback, which means that if I change the radius, I'm getting the length of it. And I use this method sometimes to get real-time feedback. Now, if you take an n side and you increase this and you go enormously high, into the thousandth, suddenly you get the correct answer. So in fact, if you do the multiplication and you can go, let's do it in any field here, just in case anyone didn't know. Just get a cube or any object, go in here and type 200, which is the radius, because the circle is 400 width, times 2 times, and type pi, and press enter. It'll give you 1256.6371. So you can do little mathematics. So you can get Cinema 4D if you want a fancy calculator as well. That's what I'm getting at. But you can see that using an n side, because it's just subdividing straight segments, it doesn't suffer from this conversion from a Bezier spline into a normal spline. So if you really, really, really want a perfect circle, just get an n side and add maybe 4,000 points. And there you go. You get the number which is pretty much identical to the mathematical circle. So that's the explanation. A circle is a Bezier object, and a Bezier object is not a perfect circle. It looks perfect, but it's not in terms of accuracy. So that's out of the way. I'm not going to deal with that. So we have donut sprinkles. Where's that question? Someone posted, if you have a torus and you want to apply clones. So someone's making donuts. Yay. So let me show you how this is done. You get I'm going to make it in a new scene because it's fairly simple. Get whatever object primitive you have here and go and add to it from the other tags, a polygon selection. Now, since a couple of versions ago, polygon selections on procedure objects work fine, and the use field is on. I'm going to use a linear field in the Y configuration and make it a bit shorter. And now it's created internally a polygon selection. Now, there's no way to see it in the viewport. You could always create a material and confine it to that selection. I usually do it using a Cinema 4D standard material, not a Redshift material, if I want to see these things. And I go, and what I tell the material is to only apply to this selection. And I change the color, of course, to make it more visible. And you can see now, moving the field, you get live feedback of which polygons are selected. Anyhow, that being said, what you can do now is you can create your little sprinkles or whatever you're trying to do, the donut or the wheel and so forth. I'm going to make it very small, make it a child of the cloner. And one thing that you may not know is that when you go to object mode, most people think this is only for objects like splines and all that. No, you can actually drag selections in here. And just increase the number, multi-instances, so we can make a lot. And there you go. You have a donut. Yay. And of course, you can go and you can add a push-apart effector and make sure the push-apart is the same radius here as your sphere. And you have a lot of sprinkles. So that will be the way to confine. And again, the field works, so you can move it around and define where you want them to be. And if your torus has more polygons, it's going to give you better resolution, and tool D, tool done, whatever. There you go. So that's how you do a donut. So let's close the donut. So another question we had, I'm just going to show it since Jonas. So I've got a quasi-procedural setup here, and what you're seeing generated is actually a continuous spline. If we have a bit time at the end, I'll show you the principles of creating this as a single spline. And what I was trying to do, and I failed because I didn't have time, I put this together in 15 minutes, was to add a component of a simulation here, but it's not as simple as it may sound. But in any case, that's what we have here. Now, there was a question about the branch modifier. So someone was asking, how can I have something similar to the branch modifier if I don't have max on 1 or an educational license in that case? Let's see. There you go. Here it is. That's from Frank. Are there internal setups if you want a similar effect as the branch spline modifier and don't have max on 1? In fact, there are. So this is what you do. You get any spline and you add the branch modifier, and then you do all sorts of branches, which is all cool. But if you're a student, you don't have access to it. What you could do, first of all, is you can create a MoSpline in turtle mode. Now, all you have to do is get a MoSpline. Let me pull it over here. Let's go closer. And go to the MoSpline object type. And go here where it says turtle. It does not create turtles. It actually uses an L system over here that allows you to do various things like branching and so forth. And in the values here, you can change the number of branching and so forth. Be careful with these numbers because it multiplies the branches. The default angle. So you can actually make some procedural tree thingies. And we have now one of the branching things, and you can clone it on the circle. So now I have a circle that has these branches. Let me throw away this. And yeah, and oops, it always adds it there in the middle. We need to think about how we're going to fix that. But nonetheless, this is how you would do something similar. You will, and this is a spline, right? You can sweep it, you can do all sorts of things, you can move it around, and so forth. So this will be one of the alternatives in doing it. And the way you can clone it on the vertices, as I've done here, or add a count, or add steps, and move it around, and the trees dance and all that. So that will be the equivalent. And of course, the connect object is constantly being updated, and you can connect these splines up. If these lines here, the blue lines, irritate you, and I'm saying it because they do irritate me, go to the MoSpline object tab, and down here where it says display mode, just set it to line. You're just going to see the lines. The dual lines and the full shape show you the thickness, because MoSpline has a component of thickness of the splines. It's quite a magical tool, MoSpline. But in any case, I can add everything under here, and now this is one complete spline. So it's a complete spline, and then you can go and you can sweep it. You can do all sorts of. Let me extrude it. You know why? Because I can. Oh, that's terrible. But in any case, yeah, you can do things like this. And that would be one way. We had a similar question, which I'm not going to answer because we answered it in the previous show, which said, said, come on, I need to find it. Where is it? Someone said about how to create a similar effect to the, what's it called? The Electric Spline. If you check out this Monday, the previous Monday, the Thunder and Tune VFX and all that, I did show a setup. I mean, why not show it again? Get a matrix object, set it to linear, add as many components as you wish, like this, right? So I have these components here. I think I added too many. There you go. Now, what am I going to do with this? I'm going to randomize these things. So I'm going to go and say, let's randomize their position in the, not in the Y, because I just want them to go left and right. And let's tell the effector to use a turbulence. So you can see they're going like that. That's fantastic. Now I'm going to confine this movement only, not in the first and the last, but only in the middle. So go to the fields and say, well, I want a linear field. I want it facing upwards. And I want this field to start and end at 0. And right here in the middle, I want it to have a maximum value to create sort of a nothing here, a lot of movement here, and nothing here. So select your field, go to the remapping, go all the way where no one usually searches, and find the contour mode and set it to curve. And now I can modulate this gradient and say I want maximum effect in the middle and minimum effect in the sides. Let me put this back again. Select this, go like that. And just go to the random and add a much bigger value. So you can see only where the field is affecting this. There you go. So we have our Thunderbolt. Of course, you can tell the random effector to go faster by increasing the animation speed in the randomization. And finally, the last thing you can do is go and add a tracer object. And instead of trace paths, you set it to connect all objects. And now you have a Thunder Spline. And yeah, there you go. So here's your Thunder Spline. And then you can create copies of this and you can do all sorts of other things. But as far as a lightning setup, this will be the way. And this is a normal spline. Now, there was a question about Redshift, the tracer, and renovate. Funny enough, I came upon this today as well. So let's assume that I want to do something with this tracer. And people's natural intuition says, oh, get a sweep object. And let's get a sweep object. Let's add a circle underneath. And let's do this. And there we go. We have our Thunderbolt. Go to the sweep. In case you didn't know it, you can go and tell the sweep in the details. Always look at those things that look, inconspicuous. And I can scale down the beginning. I can scale up the top, scale down the top with that. And I want to go to this frame here and render this. And I'm rendering in the picture viewer. And let's see. Oh, it does work in this particular case. But sometimes when you're using the tracer, it doesn't work. And here's my advice, right? If it works, it works. Forget about it. But if it doesn't work, especially if the tracer is growing, I think this happens when the tracer is growing. Instead of using a sweep, my favorite alternative method, and the reason, I'll tell you first of all, the reason I covered it in another live show I did a few years ago, is that the tracer has the propensity sometimes to change the point count of the object it's generating. And this won't allow for consistent motion blur. It will create non-interpolatable objects using Alembic and so forth. So in cases like these where you're generating an object and what you're requiring is a steady point count, instead of a tracer, instead of a sweep, what you could do is you create an object that has a specific point count, like a cylinder. I'm going to get rid of the caps because it starts and ends in a point. And instead of generating the object, we're actually going to deform this cylinder based on the spline. And the ideal deformer is a spline wrap. The spline wrap, I'm going to set it to +Y. It needs to align, this arrow needs to align with the direction of your spline. Where do you want the spline to do the deformation, right? +Y, -Y, and all that. And in the spline wrap, you drag your tracer. Now you can go to your cylinder and add height segments to make it deform any way you want it to. And this, now, funny enough, the spline wrap has underneath here the same controls like the sweep object does. So you can change this. And because this object is a defined object with a specific polygon count, and the only thing we're moving is moving things around, this is going to work with perfect motion blur. And whatever if you bake as Alembic, you are going to get an object that interpolates. So you can go to subframes, you can do all sorts of interesting things with those subframes. So to solve all these problems, instead of using a spline wrap, especially if the spline, sorry, instead of using a tracer, especially if this tracer is growing, right? And you can grow it. You can watch today's quick tip, which I need to add to the playlist. Today's quick tip actually shows you a method to create tracing paths using MoGraph. And you will see that the method I'm using is this. And that's because I was having these problems. So this will be my preferred method.
Yeah, that's a very good advice. I ran into that too. And yeah, consistent point counts can be a lifesaver in these situations where you have to render external caches from Alembic and so on. But even if it's not an external cache, it's a good practice.
Either way, you can do
have that
some
in mind.
incredible stuff if you have a consistent point count, even using the Alembic, even when they're baked. The interpolation function is absolutely amazing, and you can do great stuff. Maybe one day we can show tricks you can do with baking stuff. So Jean Christophe is asking, is the bullet system compatible with the new simulation tools? That's actually an excellent question. Now, they're not, but at the same time, they are if you use them in a unidirectional way. Now, unidirectional means one way. So you will not be able to make them react properly. A good example of this would be you get a cube, which is a bullet simulation. So a rigid body bullet. And let's get rid of gravity here. Go scene, gravity. I'm going to get a sphere that is the new simulation rigid body tag over here. And we don't have gravity. I'm going to tell this to move in the -x that way so it can hit the cube. So I'm going to go custom initial velocity. It's going to move in the -1 direction. These are x, y, z, 1,000. And you'll see that it will probably go just through. But because we share the same collider, there is a way to make these collide, but in different ways. You can, for example, cache one of your simulations and then use that as a collider to do what you want it to do. So, for example, I'm going to go and cache the sphere. Okay, so I'm going to calculate the cache. Now that this is cached, I'm going to make it a collider. Hopefully this is going to work. Or bullet collider. Let's see if it's the same collider. Go bullet. Oh, bullet collider. There you go. Now it's going to hit it. But it hits it because it's an animated bullet collider. This does not push back on this. So although there is some sort of interaction, the interaction is not pushing back. So it's a unidirect. It only goes in one way. So you can use this to your advantage, but don't expect the objects to interact with each other. It's just going to be the colliders of one system hitting the dynamic objects of the other system. So sorry if I explained it wrong, but you can see that in this particular case, we did use the two simulation systems, but it only allows for a collision in one direction. So the sphere does not receive any pushback from the cube. And that is the limitation. That's how you can blend these two systems. So I hope that answers that question. Let's see what else we have. So this keeps coming up all the time. I'm going to create a new scene because I don't want to see it. Actually, I am going to reply to this. This is the question about how do we create edge cuts in using nodes. And I'm not that you can't. We don't have tools. What you need to do, and I'm going to say it needs to be out there. If you want to do an edge cut currently, you actually need to take the topology of the object, go and add a point, insert it in the topology, insert the index into the index array, and restitch the points. So the answer is you can't. You can, but it's not worth doing at this particular moment.
It also depends a little bit on what you want to do. So if you just want to do something similar to the explosion effects, or the is it explosion effects where you get a clone for each polygon? If you want to do something like that, you can do that by saving the initial point selection.
The answer
is inner extruding with 0%, and then delete the initial points. So this will detach polygons from each other. But there is no way, as far as I know, that allows you quickly to just do that along a line or a edge selection or so.
So to demoralize people, right? You have a polygon and you want to add, this is the doodle tool, by the way. It's got 4 points, it's a single polygon, and you want to go and add a point here so that you can move it this way and create something that looks like this, right? The process is go read all the points, find the edge you want to cut, get the XYZ coordinates of each one of these, create a vector that shows how long this is, choose at which percentage or something of this line you want to put it there, calculate the size of that vector to that point, calculate the XYZ for a point on here which happens to align with this, and then recreate this topology using, let's say, 0, 1, 2, 3. Now you've added 0.4. So now you have to stitch this in the following way: 0, 4, 1, 2, 3. So the answer is no. I hope I demoralized someone out there.
Yeah, I just noticed that I just understood the question in the wrong way. Yeah.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood it the wrong way. Jonas.
No, what you just showed makes total sense. Yeah.
So let's see. We still have questions. Let's go. I'm going to go to the first blue one I find, because what we do, we highlight them and we go down the list. I'm going to answer this without having read it yet. How to combine a vertex map on a cloner. I don't know what you mean combine, but if you want to create a vertex map on anything that's not a polygon object, you can use fields. So get your sphere. I'm going to make it icosahedron again because it's my favorite sphere, and reduce the points. Put this under a cloner. There we go. And for this cloner now, I want to create a vertex map because I want to do something with it. Maybe balloon up a part of it. Right click, other, create a vertex map. And now here in the fields, I can say, okay, I want to use a spherical field, make it larger. And here's my vertex map. And that's because the object is, the cloner generates a polygon object. This will not work if you're using render instances or multi-instances, by the way. It has to be instance, so all the geometry is generated. Now, if you find yourselves creating objects that for some reason cannot accept vertex maps, use a tool that fixes everything. Is your dishwasher broken? Use a connect object. Is your refrigerator malfunctioning? Use a connect object. Connect objects can connect mesh objects, spline objects, volume objects. I did show something like that. Go put volumes underneath. It's a magnificent object, and the development team are doing a fantastic job. You know who I'm talking about, implementing these things. My very good friends from the dungeons. We have all the developers in caves. We feed them raw meat, and they perform quite well, actually. So in this particular case, now I can go and say, well, let's make this a balloon, and go to the mix animation and say, I want to confine my simulation to the higher values. This is what this means. So go to the balloon and say, I'm going to drag my vertex map in here. Let's get rid of the gravity. Everyone hates gravity. If we didn't have gravity, it would be a lot of fun. Would it? What do you think? It'd be a lot of fun not having gravity. I don't think so. So let's go to balloon, add some overpressure 3, and these should expand. Boink. There you go. When I say should expand, a lot. And 2, 1 is atmospheric pressure. Now, I do explain on this university tutorials why this is happening. It's because there's too much force here and very little to push back, and you just need to give it a bit more leeway. And talking about leeway, you can always go to your spherical. I don't know why I'm saying this. I just find it interesting to grab a thread. You can go to a minimum value and add a small value. So there's always simulation, a bit, maybe add a bit more. Let's do that. Oh, that's, I think they're too close. Yeah, that will be it. Because they're overlapping. Maybe this is going to look a bit better. Slightly better. And then go increase your settings and all that kind of stuff. But going back to the original question, this is how you add a vertex map. Now, if the question was different, and the question was, how do I add if my sphere has a vertex map? I do not have an answer for this. So I'm just, let's say my sphere here has a vertex map. I'm going to add a spherical field here and just drag it this way. What will happen if I put it under a cloner? Da, da, da. Yeah, I don't see anything, but if you want to test it, create a Cinema 4D material or set your renderer to standard just to see what's going on. Apply it to the cloner and go here in one of the channels and add a effects vertex map and drag this in here. I don't think it's going to do anything. I'm just curious. Render. Yeah, it's not doing anything because I think the vertex map gets eliminated when it generates the object. So if you want to do that, you just apply the vertex map up here and it's going to go wherever the sphere is. There you go. The spherical field got cloned, but it doesn't work. There you go. So now you have your little material thingy going on. Anyway, let's close this. What else do I have here?
Yeah, I prepared 2 scenes if you let me.
Hit it.
So let me quickly add this one. And question from Freddy. Super basic question. I feel like I can never get the direction of the Bend Deformer to work properly. What's the quickest and best way to set up a bend on a strange shape? So I just created this shape here because I thought it was strange enough. And so the thing with the Bend Deformer is there are 2 things, right? You can, of course, just edit here and say, okay, I want this to be aligned, fit to parent. This is one way. Fit to parent is just one way, right? And most of the time, or very often, it's not the best way of doing it. So what I typically do when I want to set up the Bend Deformer with an object like this strange U that I just created, right? So the axis of the U is like so, and I did that on purpose to just show that it's aligned somehow in 3D space, but not parallel to the axis. So it's actually super basic. You can move and rotate every single deformer into place. So in this case, I would just go to the side view, for example. I would rotate it in like so that it's aligning as good as possible. And then I would adjust these dimensions here like so. And let's have a look from the front. I think that's looking pretty good. Maybe it can be a little bit longer, right? And then I can just move it as I wish. And I'm going to set this to 90 degrees because I want to move it or bend it this way. A good checkbox here is always keep length. But one thing that you can use this also for, so once you notice that deformers don't have to be static, they are deforming your objects in a procedural way, right? You can move that. So you can create animations with that. You could even create a second object. Let's say, oh, that's not going to work pretty well now. If I create some sort of, let me deactivate the Bend Deformer, and let me just create some sort of tube. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller so that it can be like some sort of ring for this object. Let me have a look at the subdivisions. That's okay. I'm going to move it to the side. I'm going to move it here, and I'm going to align it roughly to this one. So we have this ring, and potentially we want to animate this along this side of the U. And what we can do is we can just make that a child of the cylinder as well, because then it will deform the tube as well. All deformers will deform their parent object and all the children, unless you you tell it not to do that. And now I can just move this around, right? And it's working. So it's also changing its shape. That's because it's a deformer. There are other ways of making that, making it like keep its shape. But this is, one way of working with deformers. You decide how you want to align them by just setting up the position and rotation in 3D space, and then you just start deforming your objects. There was another question that I wanted to reply to.
I want to jump in. When you finished, I'm going to jump into this and give a more pessimistic answer. I love to do that. I'm going to bring everyone down. Yeah, it's Thursday.
Yeah, let me...
Sad Thursday.
Yeah. Give me a second. Here we go. How to create thickness for the landscape object without converting it to a polygonal object, especially if borders at sea level is off. Polygons extrude in random directions instead of y-axis. So there is a super easy way to do that, a super easy procedural way. And I prepared a scene with a landscape object in it. It has borders at sea level ticked off. So actually, there are two ways of doing that. But the easiest way is actually to go into the generators menu and just go with the Thicken generator.
Thicken for the win.
Yes. Because today is Thicken Thursday. All right, and there you go. Now it's working, and it's completely procedural. You can adjust the thickness at some point, of course, because it's moving points in normal direction. There will be some overlap, and if you go too strong, it will create some sort of artifacts. But you can adjust the position. Let me make this a little bit more visible, so you can start from the original mesh and go in Y direction, or in negative direction, or let's say in normal direction, or a negative normal direction. And you can have subdivisions here on the side, all that cool stuff. And you can even use vertex maps to adjust the thickness or control the thickness everywhere on the mesh. So definitely check out the Thicken generator. Another way of doing not exactly the same, but pretty much the same, is by using a nodes modifier. Let me search for, we have one for Thicken, right? So there is the same for Thicken, but this one needs to be applied as a child. So that would be another way. Then you can create some sort of a modeling stack with that. Or the other one would just be the Extrude modifier. Yeah, it won't show up if you miss the R.
All right, a follow-up question. So my question is, how would you do that so the polygons do not move in the normal direction, but parallel to the y-axis? I have an answer. That's why I'm asking that. I'm showing off today.
Okay, show off.
Ha! Ha! All right, I'm going to add myself to the stage. Sometimes we press the button twice. And the reason I'm excited about this is in order to find the best way to do something, especially when there's nuance, right? We have the thicken modifier, we have extrude modifier, and all that. But what if someone says that's good, but it's not perfect? I want things to move parallel. Well, sometimes you need to totally turn the whole thing on its head. Instead of starting with a landscape object, you can actually first start with a cube, and this is a standard cube, all right? I'm going to add 40 subdivisions for the top and the bottom. And this, the height has one subdivision. I'm going to make it, what is my thickness? 5 centimeters. So instead of extruding something, I'm going to get a cube. And what I'm going to do to this cube is add a plane effector, set it to deformer mode, set the parameter to be in the Z, which is actually the normal direction. And I want to go based on the effector here. Oh, I'm going to go Y. So zero this out. I'm going to go in the Y direction based on the effector, right? Not each point. Because if I go, when we say node, it means each point. That means it's going to push out the side points as well. That's why it's creating this mess. But if you say effector, it's going to do the modification here based on the effector. And now I can go to fields and use a random field to change this to something I potentially like in terms of how the noise is going to be and so forth. And now we get everything moving the Y direction in different ways. You can create a mask around it using a spherical field, and you can use the multiply function here. So these are now in sea level, and you can change the scale of this and so forth. So sometimes, just sometimes, it's oh, and if you're wondering why we're getting sort of overlaps, that's because the noise extends in all three dimensions. If you change, I think, the scale to a very high value for the Y, then the values are going to be very similar. So yeah, and you can choose any kind of mountain landscape and whatnot. So sometimes solving a problem requires you to view it from a totally different perspective, and these are all parallel. So that's what I wanted to add to this, which is similar to, instead of using a sweep, to use a spline wrap deformer. Oh, and since I've got the screen, so the problem with the way our deformers work is that I want to deform this beautiful object just here. I just want to bend it down, nothing else. The problem is that you can't do it. In order to do it, because the deformer that has three modes, the limited, which starts at no deformation here and only deforms in the direction of the long arrow. But because this object, you can see this part of the object is within the boundaries of your deformer. The within box is only going to do it within the box, and the unlimited is going to do it everywhere. We don't have an option because from an algorithm point of view, it doesn't make sense. You can do it though by making sure that you confine your deformation using a field. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to say, okay, I like what's going on from this point onwards. Now let's find a way to take all this and remove it. So you can go to your fields and you can take, let's say, a box field over here, and you can move the box field so that it's confined, or a linear field, and move it only where you want. A linear field would do better in this particular case. You get a linear field. I'm going to get my linear field, and it's where the Bend Deformer is. It's 0. Let's rotate it around. Let's make it smaller, and let's move it that way, and rotate it a bit that way. And by just tweaking it, and you can even use vertex maps as well. So this will be a good case of using vertex maps if your shape is, manifold, if it just folds in so many different directions. But you can potentially find a way to confine it. This is a mess. Holy mother here. What's going on? So in this particular case, I would go with a vertex map and make sure that only the vertices from here all the way down are selected. And this could be a good idea for a tutorial, how to make a vertex map that takes that direction. That's going to be a UV something. I'm going to think about that. We can use the formula field inside vertex map and do this. That's actually a good idea. Let me save this, and I'm going to go here and
Write it down.
write it down. Actually, I'm going to write it on paper. You know, paper, the thing you write with this. It's a pen. It has ink.
What is that?
Ha! Jonas, I have stuff to tell you about the past.
That's so 90s. Man. Okay, let me grab the screen. And there was a question from Minimal Fun. It's actually a good name for our Sad Thursday. Is there a way to extract audio peak data?
That's a good one.
And yeah, so what I have here is a matrix object. It can be any MoGraph generator or any other object. The important thing is that I added a sound effector. So there is a sound effector here. Okay, you add that. And then down here, you have all the all the things that you need to add probes and to get the data. So first of all, you define the probe, and I don't know if were you able to hear that sound?
Oh no! For some reason, I can never get my system audio to work.
Okay.
I don't know what it requires.
That's fine. Okay, so you can see that there is some amplitude going on, or some amplitude based on frequency, right? And you can just make that probe bigger, and therefore get the amplitude. You can also just get the volume here. So this is actually what you would do. Sampling peak. So this is exactly what you need. Yeah. And then you could use that data to drive other things as well. So let's say for whatever reason you want to drive the rotation of something, you can use that data, let's say using Espresso, or if you set it up using MoGraph, you can use the data to drive something else in the scene. But the way to get the data is the sound effector. All right. I actually just noticed how late it is already.
Oh my!
Let's answer one more question. And keep the rest for next time then. So do you want to reply to the last question?
I'm grabbing the screen. So the character object, that is not something we can answer here. The blend, I'm not sure what it does. It could blend for FK and IK and all that, but I'm not sure to answer off the top of my head. That was Andreas Walsh. Cineware, 2 lights with constraint tag. Let's quickly. Constraint tag following a motion, but when I bring to A and extract the lights, it has no motion with it. You have to bake. Oh, the lights should come. I don't know. Hit me up on Twitter at Noseman GR with a very simplified scene in Cinema 4D, and I'll test it, because you should get, worst case scenario, you bake the animation. Go ahead.
Exactly. I just wanted to propose exactly that, because I read that there are constraint tags on the lights, and so from my experience, you need to bake them.
There you go. Let me show you how you would bake something if you have any procedural animation. Let's say a vibrate on an object. So this is a light that has a vibrate. What you would do is you would go to your timeline down here, and you would drag your object, and you can see there are no keyframes, and you go to functions, and you bake objects, and you will say position, rotation if there's rotation, or any animated parameters, and various of these. Press OK, and now what it's going to do, you can remove the other one, and this now has keyframes for the same positions. And this animation is going to export. So that will be your solution to that.
I did that quite often when I created camera rigs with some sort of like nulls creating the rig, but then also expressions. The expressions were the thing that had to be baked out.
Would there be a lesson on procedural generator? We don't have anything planned. I have shown how to do procedural buildings using MoGraph, and Chris Schmidt has shown how to do procedural buildings in cities. I would suggest go visit Rocket Lasso, and Chris has some sort of thing going on there. glTF, I haven't used glTF, so unless you have, Jonas?
Well, I did some testing, but yeah, I already know an expert in that field. So
we can ask
in the long run, we are planning to have him on one of our shows.
Hey, so Freddie, the answer is no. You can bake the whole simulation, then have... No, you can't do what you want to do. If there's something very specific, if you just want to save time so you don't have to simulate everything, unfortunately, you cannot cache part of it and then continuing as a simulation. The simulation works as a whole from the beginning to the end. So unfortunately, that's no, as the question was formulated. Control particles in a way that I would say for particles, use the field force. And although it doesn't do flocking of the particles, it allows you to create, using noises, some interesting force patterns that will make the particles look like they are flocking or swarming and stuff like that. Or you go thinking particles and you program it in. Noseman has gone rogue. I'm rogue. I am rogue. So what else do we have here? I'm just going quickly through about motors and connectors. So no, the new simulation system and the rigid bodies do not work with motors and connectors yet. So let's see. I think we're coming to the end of the questions. Should I be concerned about mesh checking feedback, especially in non-planar objects? Model. Well, it depends what you want to do with that model and how you modeled it, where it came from, and so forth. It's good if you, especially if you're getting CAD models and bringing them in to do a quick check. If you do optimize on models, there's always a chance your threshold is too high and you're going to get non-manifold surfaces and so forth. So it's not a bad idea to put it through a mesh check. But if you're doing standard modeling in Cinema 4D with generators and stuff like that, it's unlikely that any problem will happen. Worst case scenario, you drop an object under a subdivision surface object. And if there are any weird non-manifold edges and all that, you will see it immediately. So that would be a quick...
Yeah, let me quickly elaborate on this. Let me add my scene on my screen here. Let me just create like a single polygon by just creating a plane, setting the segments to 1 by 1, and then let's add mesh check. There we go. So here we have mesh check. We're gonna add it here, and your question is based on the non-planar polygons. So in general, there's nothing wrong about these. At the moment, you can see it is planar because it is a plane. But whenever you have a scenario that has one point like pushed down, you can see that it's already a non-planar polygon because these 3 points are in a line, and these or in a plane, and now these 3 points are in a line. If I would create a cut here, both would be planar again. So the only way to really have a completely clean mesh checking with the planar polygons option enabled is with triangles, obviously, or if it's just 100% flat. You don't need to worry about that because func shading is gonna get rid of anything that can create problems unless it's too extreme. But usually if you have like a round shape, let's say on a sphere or on a deformed object or so, you don't need to worry about that.
I'd like to a quick hit me up on Twitter, Minimal Fun, and ask me that question because I got an idea where how you can retime an alembic potentially using what Jonas showed. So yeah, you can extract the peak, but if you want to add it to make someone dance faster when it's louder, hit me up. Maybe that's an interesting thing to show in one of our upcoming shows. So that's interesting. I think we have only two quick ones.
I'm just adding our social handles here. So reach out to us if you have questions. We are here for you.
Yeah. So the question from Yinon, this will be something you would do using AOVs or multipassers. And I think on Monday we have a whole month of compositing and AOVs. Is that correct, Jonas? On
that is correct.
Demystifying post-production on Monday, and you can also ask that question as well. But what you're asking here may be able to be done using some sort of composite object, but the best way to do it is using an AOV to render the reflection separately. That's yeah.
Yeah, isn't there, if you add the Redshift object tag, let me quickly get rid of this here. So let's set this up very, very, very quickly. So let's say we have a plane and we have a sphere. And typically what I would try here, let's add a refractive material to the plane. So this is refractive enough. And if you render this using Redshift, you can see that the sphere is being reflected here. Maybe let me add some sort of, let me add a dome light here as well. And maybe a second sphere so that we can check if it works. So I would try to go with a Redshift object tag and under visibility hit override. And usually there may be a way. So seeing the object is usually the primary rays. The secondary rays are the rays that are any sort of reflection normally. So if you untick this, let's see if that's going to work. Yeah, there we go. So this is what you need. You add the Redshift object tag and you untick primary ray visible. This is going to remove the object from being rendered, but you can still see the reflection. And if you want the other way around, let me see. No, that's not it then. Visible in reflections. Oh, that should actually work. Visible in reflection. Okay, we have to investigate on that. But if you don't want to see the object itself, but only the reflection, then this is the way how you would do it. All right.
A quick response to Streamcatcher Society that when I do 3D printing, I find that the volume builder, volume mesher workflow gives me fantastic results to combine objects and so forth. It may not be applicable 100% in what you want to do, just to add thickness and have the object inside hollow. That is where the Thicken would be. But overall, using the volume builder, volume mesher to subtract objects and do all sorts of things is actually a fantastic method. And I've made quite a few 3D printed models using it. Even gears that work. You put a low enough...
Even gears?
Yeah, low enough voxel size with adaptive meshing just to keep the polygon count low. And yeah, with Cura slicer on my Ender 3 Pro, Ender 3 V2, not Pro, sorry. I don't have the good one. And yeah, so try that. And I think we've reached the end of questions. If we didn't answer any questions and all that, missed them and so forth, please hit us up on Twitter and prepare some files. And yeah, I guess I hope you enjoyed it. And let's go through the closing.
Yeah, let's do some housekeeping here in the end. Again, as I showed in the beginning, if you want to learn more about all the events that we are doing and or attending, be it live events or online events, then you go to the Maxon website, news, events. And this is the site where you can find everything here. If you missed one of our live streams, you can always go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, and here you can find all the recordings and a few more things. There is a ton of training here, and as you might already know, it's absolutely worth watching all of this. Good. If you want to watch, let's say, a Getting Started series for one of our apps or a particular feature, that was a non-intended pun, by the way. You can go to Cineware, and here our friend Chet Perkins created a new trap code particular series, Getting Started series, which is amazing. Definitely check that out. It's really cool. But also, if you want to get started in one of the other apps, check these out. All right. Next one, if you are interested in certification, maxon.net certification/certification, I mean. And there are these certification topics that are pretty interesting and a good watch, because what you can find here is a list of everything that can potentially be asked during the test. So if you are wondering how to prepare for a certification test, this would be the first place to go. And some of these points even have links with them where you can find more training resources. All right. And the last thing I want to share here is the merch store here, because we want to give away free t-shirts. So what you can do is you can use this passcode that we're showing at the moment to log onto that page. The link has been shared in the chat. You type that in, and then you can access the merch shop and order one t-shirt for free, and you would only have to pay for the shipping. And with that being said, we are at the end of what we wanted to show today. So thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you very much for hanging out with us.
Thank you very much, Noseman, for replying to so many questions. Thank you, Kyle, for producing in the background. Thank you, Dr. Sassi, for creating all the timestamps for all of our shows. That's really amazing. And yeah, thanks to our audience. Thanks to you, everyone, for watching.
And enjoy February. Happy Groundhog Day tomorrow. Just don't live it over and over and over and over.
All right. Bye, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.